next up, we've got Curtis as wide receiver 2. We've got Tyreek Hill in at number 4. This is the first guy we probably differ on quite a bit. He was ranked 4th by the Fantasy Pros. So far, we're spot on with their rankings. I actually had him down at 9th, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. Curtis, you had him up at 2nd. Why are you so keen on Tyreek?
I feel like he was out quite a bit last year, especially in the first half of the season. Well, first half, a bit more actually. It was my first 2/3 of the season. Um, but when he was in, he had a real impact, and he did have a lot of points on the board once he was in the team. So one I don't know, just seeing that just made me think maybe he's a top 2 prospect in the wide receivers. And yeah, I don't know. He's obviously got the pace. They've got a lot of options as well, though, I have to say, in Watkins as well. So maybe looking back at it, he might be a bit further down, but I still think he's a top 5 wide receiver, in my opinion.
Yeah, Pilch, you also were pretty high on him, so do
Yeah.
you agree with all that?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And another thing I thought about, if you're going into a game, like a head-to-head fantasy game, who is the scariest wide receiver that you do not want to verse in fantasy? It's Tyreek Hill, because he can chuck up like Mahomes has thrown 7 touchdowns in a game before. Like he can just absolutely go off, and he's got an extremely high ceiling. So he's just a bloke that I'd probably rather have on my team for that reason, because he can win you a league just by himself pretty much.
Yeah, the reason I got him down at 9th is I just don't know if I want to put such a high pick on someone as inconsistent as Tyreek Hill. We know, so he's going to average high. I think he could average top 5, but I still don't know if I would take him as a top 5 wide receiver, if you know what I mean. Because I think he can actually lose you a lot of fantasy matchups by pumping out low scores. I worked out his median of his. I think he played 12 games last year, so he had a couple games where he got injured early. So that cancelled that out, and then it cancelled out his mammoth games, and his median was actually 12.9, which was 4 below his average. So it showed that his 32.7 and his 26 was seriously bumping up that average. But that's what you get with Tyreek Hill, isn't it? 1 week he'll win you a match, next week he might lose it for you. So it's just the kind of fantasy player you are, really, whether you want someone who's going to be up and down or someone who's just going to flatline like Julio. So yeah, I definitely see the arguments for him there. They have less running backs this year. They've got a rookie man as the number 1 option, so they already throw the ball a lot, but they could start throwing it even more. I think Kelsey would have received more targets last year than he did the year before, so that's something not that would go against Tyreek Hill. But yeah, another reason I have him down at 9th, let alone the median stuff, is he came 11th last year. So that includes, I think, 2 injury-affected scores. But for me, I just don't see where the jump comes from 11th to like 2nd. But I do think he will improve on 11th. But that brings us down to DeAndre Hopkins. This is someone who, this was a tough one. At one stage, I had him below a lot of the guys who we've got coming up in the next few picks. I had him down. Yeah, I'm not going to say their names. I'm not going to spoil it, but I had him quite low at one point, and then I thought, no, it's DeAndre Hopkins. He's probably the most talented or second most talented wide receiver in the league. So I thought it'd be rude to have him that low. So we've got him in at 5th. I had him in at 5th as well. Pilch, you had him at 6th. Curtis, you had him in 4th. So not that much difference there. Curtis, why are you backing him over Devontae Adams?
I feel like there's a lot of upside with Arizona and consequently Hopkins. Obviously their QB's now in his 2nd year. He's got some more experience, so you'd think he's going to be able to hit targets a lot more. Obviously he's a bit of a dual threat quarterback, which might take away some points from Hopkins. But it's Hopkins. Like he's just gonna put up points. Like whatever we think, whatever argument I feel like we're gonna make, he's just somehow gonna put up points. He's got the best pair of hands in the league. He's a great route runner. So yeah, I just think he's gonna rack up points. Like I just feel like whatever arguments we make, it's just gonna happen whether we like it or not.
Yeah, no, it's actually
Yeah.
true. Like he's probably one guy who, if he got double teamed, I wouldn't even care. Like
Yeah,
he's gonna just catch it, isn't he? He's that good.
yeah.
Pilch, you had him below all the guys we've mentioned so far. So why are you not rating him as high as past years?
Yeah, well, like you just said, I actually had him even lower at one stage, but then I bumped him up because, as Curtis said, it is DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah,
But I do think his move to Arizona is going to hurt him more than it'll benefit
yeah,
him
I agree.
because he's losing the chemistry that he had with Watson, and he'll naturally probably get a few less targets with a little bit more wide receiver competition in Arizona with Christian Kirk set to break out, Larry Fitz still kicking, whereas last year he had like Kenny Stills, is it, and an injured Will
Yeah,
Fuller who only played
yeah,
about
both of
6
them were injured
games.
actually.
Yeah,
So I don't even know who their wide receiver two for half of it was, but
yeah. So I expect him to get less targets, which will just
yeah.
mean less points, but he's still a gun, so wouldn't be surprised if he's right up there.
Yeah. The thing with me is why I had him so low at one point was there's so much uncertainty around DeAndre Hopkins and pretty much anyone who moves teams. Um, whereas all these other guys right up there their situations haven't changed, so they're pretty safe. But DeAndre Hopkins, you're probably looking at an early second round pick, maybe even a late first rounder, depending on how things go. And that's a pick you want to have a guaranteed gun in. Where Hopkins, as we said, he's DeAndre Hopkins, so he's going to be a beast no matter what. But like, we don't really know what the situation's going to be like. Kirk's looking good. Fitzgerald's still getting quite a lot of targets. Hopkins hasn't really dealt with a high volume backup in the last like 3 years. The rest of his receiving core's been pretty mythical. Only like to get a few targets in, like Will Fuller and Kenny Stills. But we'll see how he goes. He is also taking, although we like Kyler Murray on this potty and we've rated him high in terms of fantasy, in terms of actually he's nowhere near Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson will make a lot better throws than Kyler Murray will miss, if you know what I mean. But yeah, as we said, it's DeAndre Hopkins, so can't really hate on him too much. And another thing, we were talking about the lack of wide receivers he had at Houston. That actually might benefit him going to Arizona because, there might be less attention on him with defenders and whatever. But yeah, he's still making our top 5, so obviously we still rate him very highly. Next, all right, so now we move into, that's pretty much the boring portion of it gone. They were all pretty much locked in that top 5, I reckon. Well, not necessarily, but next up we've got Chris Godwin.
Yeah.
What was he, second last year? Yep, second last year overall, but in the second half of last year he came 11th, so started off very hot, came home a bit slow. We've all got him similar. I had him at 6, Pilch 5, Curtis 9. Fantasy Pros had him at 6 as well. Curtis, why are you not too hot on Christopher Godwin? Christopher Godwin, as I found out yesterday.
So this is pretty much where I hit what I call like my second tier of wide receivers. So there's my clear first tier, who I feel like are just guaranteed to put up points, and then there's this kind of second tier who are a bit more inconsistent. Um, Godwin obviously, as you said, had a ripper first half of the season, but then he kind of came back down to earth in the second half of the season. And I feel like the second half of the season's a more realistic representation of where he's at and what he's going to put up. So that's why I have him down at 9th. I feel like that's where he probably sits. He probably sits around that kind of 10 maybe to 7 or 8 range. So yeah, that's why I had him down at 9th, just because the second half of last season was a better representation, in my opinion, of where he's sitting.
Yeah, I'll be honest, lads. The Tampa boys, I had absolutely no idea. At one point, I had them down in like 20th, and I had chucked them up at like 3 and 4. Like, it's an absolute mystery what they're going to pump out this year. Because going from Jameis to Tom Brady is probably the worst thing a fantasy wide receiver can do. Because obviously, like, an interception is not going to hurt a wide receiver score, is it? So they're just getting the positives from Jameis Winston. So yeah, I think that's a big worry with these Tampa boys. I'd be very skeptical when drafting them. Tom Brady's not, going to be throwing many passes more than 15 yards, and Yeah, I'm just pretty worried about it, if I'm honest. As I was talking about with Hopkins, any person who their situation has changed drastically, like a change of quarterback, you seriously got to take a grain of salt with like their scores last year and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, he's pretty good. He's in the mold of all the guns. Like he gets a lot of volume. He doesn't rely on like big 80-yard passes or anything like that. So if Tom Brady uses him like a Julian Edelman, I can't see why he's not going to be a top 10 wide receiver once again. So yeah, Pilch, why have you got him in at 5th?
Yeah, Godwin's an absolute weapon. He had one of the, it might have even been the highest catch rate in the whole NFL last season. And as you said, with Brady coming in, I think that'll help Godwin a lot more than it'll help his partner in crime, who I've ranked fairly low, as we'll see soon. But yeah, the Godwin generally plays in the slot, whereas Evans goes for the deep balls, and Brady will be airing it out far less than Jameis was last season. So I think Godwin will cop a lot of volume.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I 100% agree with that. It's just a little bit of uncertainty that I don't like when you're using such a high pick. And then next, so here's where it gets interesting. Here is where it actually gets bloody spicy. This is where Fantasy Pros and the On the Ball podcast start differing quite a lot. Next up, we've got Adam Thielen.
Ooh.
I had him at number 4. Pilch had him at number 9. Curtis had him at number 12. Fantasy Pros had him down at 13th. I'll start us off actually. So I've got him in number 4. Let's lay the scene, all right? Adam Thielen, where did he come? He came 6th in 2018, dealing with Stephon Diggs next to him, taking all his targets. This time, Stephon Diggs has gone to Buffalo, fellas. He's dealing with a 7th round. I was reading yesterday, apparently Justin Jefferson's actually looking like he's going to be the wide receiver 3 for Minnesota this year. And like a 7th round pick called like Olabisi Johnson or something is going to be their second man.
Yeah.
So to me, that's all that sounds like is just Thielen. So that's pretty much the main reason. But then if you look at his average last year, it wasn't great when he played. I'll admit that. But he got 20 in the playoffs game against the Saints, who's one of the best defensive teams. He got injured in 2 of the games in the first quarter. So if you take them out, his average moves to about 15th, which would have 15, which would have had him about 20 low teens last year, which is not great. But I think he was playing injured in a couple of the games, and when he came back from injury, I think they rushed him back. So yeah, for me, I can't see why he's not going to go back to 2018 form when he was just raking in reception after reception. When he's at his peak, he can be like one of those top 5 receivers who just gets volume. Whereas Stephon Diggs was more a bit of a Mike Evans, like go long, catch it, brother. So yeah, I'm a big fan on the Thielen train this year. Curtis, why are you not too hot on the great man?
I'm a bit worried about Cousins, actually. I don't know. Obviously, if Cousins doesn't perform, it's going to impact Thielen. So, I don't feel like Cousins is going to be as hot as he was last year. And Thielen obviously didn't perform great last year, even when Cousins was hot. So, that's why I've just gone a bit further down than you'd probably expect of him, especially considering he's an out and out gun. And 2018, even 2017, he was beast. He was racking up TDs. I think he had 8 straight games of 100 yards in 2018 and
Broke the
2017.
record, I think.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm just I feel like I'm not as hot on him as obviously you are. And I feel like that just might be A, because he was injured quite a bit of last year, and B, because of Cousins. So those are my 2 reasons as to why I'm not as hot on Thielen as you are.
Yeah, I have to admit, there's a lot of risk attached with that. Like, I'm a pretty risk. Wait, is risk averse when you don't take into account risk, or you just hate risk?
Yeah.
What's the one where you just hate risk?
Yeah, risk averse.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'm pretty risk averse, especially when it comes to fantasy. So it's a bit contradictory for me to pick Thielen as my wide receiver 4, but yeah, I don't know. I just back him in. Pilch?
Yeah, I'm surprised by that. I thought I was high on Thielen, but you've blown me out of the water there. corker. But yeah, basically all the same reasons as you. Diggs leaving frees up, 100 targets, and they're not all just going to go to Justin Jefferson. So Thielen will be taking loads of those. But they are a run first offense. Like Dalvin Cook's their priority, and also he is like 20. I think he's 28. It's like he's getting on a bit now, but he'll be elite this season. No doubt about it. Like injuries dogged him last year.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident he'll be top 10. I think number 4, I have to admit, it's a bit ambitious. I'm not sure if there was Tyreek Hill or Hopkins or Godwin on the table. I don't know if I'd take Thielen over them, but I do think he's going to be very good and he's going to be a great pickup. I reckon you could maybe sneak him in like the 3rd or 4th round, and I think he's going to be an absolute steal down there. But yeah, as Curtis said, Cousins, big question mark. Another question mark with him is Diggs leaving. Now he could cop a lot more attention from the defense, where in the past, Diggs probably almost caught more attention than him, even though Thielen was more, he had more impact in terms of stats, but Diggs was kind of scarier for defenses because, he could whip out like a 60-yard TD. So I think Thielen might struggle a little bit with that attention. But yeah, I really like him. And also, he played the first half of last year, and I know Cousins got hot, but that was more in the second half. So I think now that they've realised they need to play a bit more play action with Dalvin Cook being a beast, I think that might help Thielen, but we'll have to wait and see with that one. He's a big risk, so I have to admit. And it's a bit weird. It's a bit of a contradiction for me because there's another guy who's not made our 15 today, so we'll talk about him whenever we do the Roughies podcast, but I rated him very low for similar reasons. So it's a bit confusing. But next up...
It's a miracle! Oh, yeah! What about that one? Unbelievable! Balotelli, Aguero! Crowd cheers. Here's Siddle.